Hi everyone, my name is Karen and I'm here on behalf of Loros UK to introduce you to this tutorial on how to make a little girl's dress. And this is for their campaign #ShopLoros that they've been running throughout the year to encourage people to basically go into charity shops and purchase items and upcycle them, or you buy things for your everyday wear or use. And today I want to show you how to upcycle an item of clothing bought from the charity shop into a little girl's dress. And as a previous example, I have actually made this dress from a skirt that I bought from my local charity shop, Loros, down the road, and it was a Bowden skirt that I bought that I've literally just upcycled into a little girl's dress. I think I bought a size 14 and it was enough fabric to make this dress, which I think is for a 6-month-old little girl. So I want to show you how to do the same. So I have chosen a pattern to use for this tutorial. It is more of a baby pattern, so it goes from newborn to 21 to 24 pounds. And the pattern I've chosen, if I can zoom in on this, is New Look 6576. Sorry, it's a bit bright. And it's just basically a little pinafore dress which does up with 2 buttons at the top, but to make it even simpler you can just use snaps for that, which is what I'm going to do for this tutorial today. So basically what you'll need for this project is obviously a sewing machine, some matching thread, buttons if you did want to do the buttons, or snaps, fasteners for that. The ones I use are basically plastic snaps, and you do have to use a pair of Vario pliers to actually attach them on, which you can get from most haberdashery shops. I bought mine from Crafty So-and-So in Leicester, which is in St Martin's Square, and they have a lot of beautiful fabrics and notions in there. However, today we are going to be using fabric from the Loros charity shop, so I'm hoping to find something to do this tutorial with. So I'll be venturing into Leicester today to do that. And just as another example, this dress that I am wearing today is actually fabric that I bought from my local charity shop. It was just a fabric that somebody had obviously taken there. I think there was about 1.5 meters, and I managed to get this dress out of it. So it just goes to show what you can find in charity shops is not always something that you're looking for, but something that can be really useful. I had it in my stash for a little while and I got it out, and that's what I've used it for, so I'm really pleased. I'm always on the lookout for all sorts of different things in the charity shop. It's one of my favourite pastimes, charity shop shopping. So without further ado, we shall now pop off into town and go to the Loros charity shop, which is located on Market Street in Leicester, which I've been told is where a lot more of their stock goes to, so it's probably one of their more popular shops. So fingers crossed we can find something to make this dress with. I'm looking for cotton sort of materials, and something with not a lot of detail on, so I don't really want a button placket on it. I just want something plain and simple. So if you get something like a skirt, it is literally just hopefully one piece of fabric, and I'll unpick it all and then be able to turn it into the dress. You could obviously also maybe use a shirt if you've got a large size, but bearing in mind shirt fabrics are a little bit thinner than like your skirts and tops and things that you can usually find in a charity shop. Okay, see you a bit later. Okay, here we are outside the Loros shop on Market Street in Leicester. So let's go in and see if we can find something appropriate to make this dress with. Fingers crossed. Okay, I think I might have found something. Again, this is actually another Bowden, but I found this dress that would be suitable for the little girl's dress. So that's a possibility. It's a woven fabric. It's a little bit thicker than your usual cotton, but it would be something that would work. Here we go. Another woven fabric, simple, no zips or closings in the back, so you can just use that to cut it out. Okay, I've decided I'm actually going to go with the skirt because I really like the fabric, and I also like the pattern on it. So this is my choice for the little girl's dress that I'm going to make. Okay, I'm at Crafty So-and-So in Leicester, and I just wanted to quickly show you the vario pliers and the snaps that you can put on for this dress. So here we have the various snaps that you can get, and they're in different colours, and just here is the vario pliers there. Okay, so they're by Prim. You can order them online or get them from various haberdashery shops. Okay, so I'm back at home now. It is the evening, so you'll see that the lighting has changed slightly. Sorry about that. And I wanted just to show you the skirt in its full glory, and also just to talk about the pattern a little bit more, and just some tips before we actually do start the tutorial. So here is the skirt. As you can see, it's got a nice texture to it. It's quite a thick fabric, but I think once I take the lining out, it actually has an acetate lining. I'm going to take that out. I'm not going to use it. I'll probably just keep it in my stash. You never know what I might end up using it for. And I'm just going to actually just use the outer fabric for the skirt, for the dress. I have checked the label, and it's a viscose cotton fabric, and it does actually say it needs to be dry cleaned. However, I'm not going to dry clean it. I think the best thing for me to do is just to wash it on a gentle cycle. I think that should be more than enough to serve its purpose for any shrinkage, because what I do with all my projects is pre-wash my fabric for shrinkage purposes, because the last thing you want is to make up a project and then for it to be ruined by it shrinking and not fitting. So I'm going to do that first. So I suggest you do that if you do buy anything, even if it has been bought from a charity shop, because not always has the item of clothing been worn. It could be that it's brand new. On a number of occasions I have actually bought a dress or something and it's got the original tag in it from the shop, so just check that, but hopefully if you do purchase something from the charity shop, then it should hopefully have been worn and washed, and you can just avoid doing this at the beginning. Okay, so that's the skirt. I'm really pleased with that. It's a size 8, so it is quite small to be upcycling into a different project. However, I've checked that the pattern fits, and I'm just going to do the newborn size just to make sure that I've got enough fabric there. So that is one thing to bear in mind when you do go into the shops. Just literally pick a large size so you can get as much use of the fabric as possible. For the pattern, this obviously comes in multi-sizes, and when you purchase a pattern it does have the tissue paper inside, and the multiple patterns are overlaid on top of each other. So what I usually do is, rather than cutting straight into the tissue paper, I trace over the size that I want to do so that I don't actually cut into the original tissue paper, just because if I want to make something again from that particular pattern in a different size, I've not ruined it and I don't have to re-buy the pattern. So for this dress, this pattern, I've actually just traced it with greaseproof paper or baking paper, because the pattern pieces are small enough to do that. If you were using a larger size, like for an adult size dress or something like that, you would probably need some tracing paper of a larger size, or you can get dot and cross paper, which is what a lot of people use to copy patterns. So this pattern only has 4 pieces, so I've actually traced out as the back piece and the front piece, and then you have the back facing and the front facing. So just 4 pieces, really quite simple. But obviously the next thing to do is, once you've pre-washed your item of clothing fabric and copied out your, traced out your pattern, then it's time to start unpicking the item. So to do that, if you don't already know, is to use one of these. It's called a seam ripper or an unpicker, whatever you want to call it, and you just basically take it into the threads at the hem and start just sort of hacking away at it, but just really be careful not to sort of gouge into your fabric. You just want to make sure that you are just getting the threads that have stitched the item together. Okay, So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to wash it and then I'm going to unpick it, and then we shall start with pinning the pattern onto the fabric and then going on to the actual sewing. So I shall see you after I've done that. Here we have the fabric now, all nice and freshly washed, and I've just given it a good iron with the steam iron. Plenty of steam to get the creases out. So now we are ready to start putting our pattern pieces on. Here we are at the pinning and cutting out stage. So firstly, if you fold your fabric right sides together, so pattern side facing down to each other, and then if you just pin your pattern pieces onto the fabric, what you'll need to do is to actually follow the fold line here, and so you place that on the fold. So basically this pattern piece is half the dress, and then you place it on the fold, and then when you open it up you'll have obviously a full piece. So if you just pin it to the fold, and then once you've done that, you can add any markings that you need to onto the reverse of the fabric. And to do that, I just use one of these dressmaker's pencils that you can again get from any haberdashery shop, and it is literally just like a little crayon. And to mark the actual markings, it is just like things like buttonholes and where the buttons go. So this one obviously is for where the button is going to be placed, and I just literally unpin the pattern piece off the fabric and then just make a little mark with the pencil, as you can see just here, and then just place it back on there. And basically the next thing you need to do is cut out little notches on the fabric, and you'll see that on the pattern piece again there are these little triangle bits, and this is just to show where the fabric needs to be aligned together when you come to sew it and pin it. So to do that, you just take a little pair of scissors and you just put a little snip in the middle of the triangle, like this. Okay, so just make sure it's gone through. Yeah, and then you'll just get a little, basically, a little flap there. So I'll carry on doing that around the rest of the triangles, and then we shall then unpin and start piecing the pieces of fabric together, ready for sewing. Okay, so I've taken the pattern pieces off the fabric and I've put all my little notches in. So there you'll see a little snip there, if you can see that. And I've done that on where all those little triangles were. Where the markings are for the buttonholes and where the buttons go, I've just made a mark. I'm not, again, like I said, I'm not actually going to use buttons for these, but it's nice to know sort of whereabouts it should be. Obviously, because we've done this on the fold, you will need to do it on the other side. So before we open up the fabric, I just turn it over, and then I'm just going to relay the pattern piece onto the other side. I'm not going to pin it, literally just relay it on so I can see where those markings need to be on the other side of the dress. So take my pencil, and the dot is just here. So just peel it back, literally I put it on top of the tracing paper, and I just sort of peel it back, and then I know it was about there, and I just make a little mark. This will wash out, and it is on the reverse side of the fabric anyway, so it's not a big deal if it doesn't come out anyway. And the facing will obviously be on this, so I'm just doing it with this one, just here. So it's about there. Let's do a line like this. Okay, so there we have it. We now have our pattern pieces ready. So if you open them up, you'll see that's the back of the dress, and those notches that I was referring to, always on the armhole at the back, you'll have 2 notches there,
on each armhole, so you know that that is the back if you had back and front that was the same. And then on the front armhole there's always just only one notch on each armhole. So if you're ever putting in a sleeve, the sleeve would have the same notches, and then you'd know which sleeve belonged to which side of the dress. So there we are. Okay, so now we are ready to start pinning the actual fabric to each other, ready for sewing. Okay, let's pin. So back piece facing up and front piece facing down on top, and literally we are going to pin the side seams because this is what we're going to stitch together first. So to do that, first of all, find the notch that you made, if there was any on the side. Maybe there isn't, is there? Or maybe I missed that one. Anyway, okay, so literally align up the edges, and I always pin so that I have my pins facing out like this. Let me see if I can show you properly. Hope you can see that. Just so when you are stitching, it's easier to take the pins out as you go along. Okay, so we're just going to pin along that side and then pin along that side. Here we are, the side seams all pinned, ready for sewing. You will find that the front won't lay flat onto the back piece because it is slightly wider than the back pattern section, so it's just to allow for room, I guess. So we're ready now to stitch this on the sewing machine, so make sure your sewing machine is threaded up, ready with all your correct coloured thread, and I shall see you at the machine. Okay, so the seam allowance is 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch, whichever you prefer to use, and you should have the these numbers on your pad here. So I'm going to start stitching one of the side seams. It doesn't matter which side you start from, top end or bottom end, whatever your preference is. Okay, here we are, 1.5 centimetres, needle down, and away we go. Okay, so they're both stitched. I'm going to take the pins out and just snip off the excess threads at each end. You will notice that I didn't take my pins out as I went, which is very naughty of me, so perhaps it is something that you should get in the habit of doing. And then we shall need to finish the seam edges, as this fabric in particular is a bit frayy, and if you wash it, it will just all unravel, so we need to finish the edges by doing a zigzag stitch along there, and I will be changing my foot for that, because I have like an overlocker foot attachment for it. You don't need to use it, just a standard zigzag stitch will do the job, but it just looks slightly better. I think it just finishes it better on that foot that I have, which I'll show you. Okay, so here is my overlocker foot, which I'll be using just to finish those seams at the side. So I'll just swap over the foot literally by pressing a button at the back of my sewing machine and then attaching this foot. Okay, and just make sure the thread's through, okay. And then I set my machine to a zigzag stitch, which is number 10 on my machine. If you're interested, the machine I'm using is a Janome Decor computer, so DC 3050. It isn't one of the cheaper models, it's sort of a mid-range, and you can get more standard models that would certainly do the job absolutely fine. But just so you know, that's the one I'm using, so all the attachments for this are obviously a Janome machine. Okay, so I'm going to finish this edge, so I've put it on my zigzag, number 10. I'm not changing the width, anything like that, and I'm just, before I do that, I did just snip off half of that seam allowance, just so it's not such a big seam when it's inside, because I think it can be a bit scratchy otherwise. And as this is just a basic tutorial that I'm doing today, I am just doing these types of scenes. But usually I'll do French scenes, which is where all the raw edges are enclosed, but that is a little bit more time consuming, and I don't want this video to be too long. So I've snipped off those seams down a little bit, and on this foot there is a little guide where you need to put the edge of the fabric, so I'm just going to butt that up against there and then get going. Hope you can see that okay. Okay, and then you can't really see it very well on this fabric because the colour of the thread I've used is so close, you can hardly see, but you'll see that there is still a little bit of frayedness going on there, but that will not unravel in the wash, so it just prevents it from coming undone anymore. You can snip those little pieces off, which is what I will do at the end, just to get rid of that because it looks a bit untidy, and I do like it to look neat. So I'll do the other side now. Okay, with that done then, I always like to press the seams to the back of the dress. So you just need to take it over to your iron, which should be on a steam setting, and then just literally iron it to the back. So the best thing to do is actually to put the dress through, onto the ironing board, and then you'll get it nice and flat and be able to just iron it so it's against the back section of the dress. So I'll do that on both these side seams, and then we shall take you on to the next section of attaching the two facing pieces together, which essentially is exactly the same as what we have done with the front and back pieces of the dress. Okay, so I've pressed those so they are actually facing now the back, and you can turn this dress now right side facing out. And for the moment we are just finished with that, so just pop that to one side, and then take your front and back facing pieces that you would have done the same with earlier, putting the snips in the notches, those triangle sections, and then we're going to do the same. So we literally are putting right sides together, printed side to printed side, finding those two little notches and aligning those up, and then pinning them together. Let's turn it around this way, do that side. Okay. So I'll literally just stick maybe 2 pins in there to keep them together. And round. Okay. Lining that up. If you have forgotten to do the notches, it's really not a big deal because the pieces are the same size at that edge, so you can just align them. Okay, so now I need to change my foot back to the normal one to do a regular stitch, and then I'll overlock the side sections again once I've cut down the side seams just by half. Okay, so I'll do that, and then we shall come back onto actually attaching. No, we won't. We shall actually need to finish this edge because this is a raw edge that will be on show, and the best thing to do is I'm literally going to fold over a section, just a tiny bit, and press it, and then I'm going to literally finish that edge as I have done with the side seams for the zigzag stitch. Okay. Okay, so my facing piece I've stitched exactly the same as I did for the front and back of the dress. Side seams together, then finished the raw edges after I'd cut them half of their width. And then I've literally just pressed those seams to the back of the facing piece, of the facing, and then I've just folded the raw edge at the bottom under, just maybe by a couple of, I don't know, maybe 3mm. I don't know, not very much at all. Literally just so it is a neater finish. When you do the zigzag here, you haven't got those raw edges sticking out like you did on the inside of the dress. That is literally because it will sit against the back and front of the little girl, baby, wearing it, so it is a little bit more comfortable, and also it just looks nicer, because sometimes obviously when you've got it hanging in the wardrobe you can see that facing. Okay, so I'm going to zigzag that. To do that, I'm going to take this piece off my machine, because when you have a circular piece that's a little bit smaller, it's easier to put it around so it goes under the machine. So it's like when you're doing a cuff, it's just slightly easier. So I'm going to zigzag on there. So I'm going to butt the fabric up against the little end of this this foot, so that the fabric is right in the right place. But I am actually going to start at a side seam, because I always think it's better to have those overlapping stitches in a place where you're not really going to see them. Okay, so I've got it at number 10, my zigzag stitch, butted up that fabric to that little knobbly bit, needle down, and away we go. And as you go, just make sure that this stays folded under, because sometimes it likes to start coming back the way it originally was. Okay. So I shall show you what it looks like. So you can see I've zigzagged just over the edge, and with it being folded, it just looks that little bit prettier. Okay. Alright, so now we need to turn the facing to the reverse side, and we are now going to pin this onto the dress. So you literally are putting the facing piece on the outside of the dress, so like you put the dress, basically feed it inside, and then you want to match up the raw edges all the way around and pin, again with your pin sticking outwards. And if you try to maybe remember to take the pins out as you sew, unlike me. Okay, there will be obviously those notches, and this is where you need to align them up. So literally get them so they're together, and I always like pin maybe one each side of that little notch just to hold it in place, and one on the other side of that little split there. And then you also match up your side seams, so just so when you flip the face into the inside eventually, those seams will be straight. So this is where you need to align all your notches and your side seams. I usually do those first, and then I will then pin around the rest of the dress. So I'll continue to do that, and then we will be at the stitching stage again. Okay, so I've actually gone ahead and stitched the face into the dress, and it was just using the 1.5cm seam allowance all the way around the edge. And when you come to do the strap sections on the front and on the back, you'll need to make sure that when you come up with your sewing machine stitching along this line, instead of just going off the edge of the fabric there, you'll need to make sure that you kind of guess roughly where 1.5cm is in, and keep your needle down, and then lift your presser foot up and pivot your fabric so that you're able to start stitching along, and stop again where you think 1.5 centimetres is that side, and then do the same, keep your needle down, lift your presser foot, and then stitch down, and that will literally make it square, because the last thing you want to do is run off your fabric and then you'll have nothing here because there'll just be a hole there. So once you've done that, what we need to do is then to turn the facing to the other side. But before we do that, you'll need to cut off half of the seam allowance again, like I did on the side seams, and then when you do the corners, you need to cut them at an angle. so when you are turning it to the other side, those points are sharper. And to do that, to turn it round, I always use a chopstick just so it pushes out the edges. So what I'll do is I'll carry on and cut half of this seam allowance off, and then obviously a slant on those corners, and then we shall flip it through to the other side, and I'll show you how I do poke that with a chopstick, and it is fairly easy. Okay, so with the edges just snipped down half its width, on the sections where there is a curve, you will just need to snip into that, just attach a little bit like the notches, just a little snip, and it is literally just to help the facing lay flat. When you flip it round, it will just create a smoother bend or finish or whatever. So I should do that now, and you need to be careful not to snip into your line of stitching, because obviously you'll create a hole. So it is literally just as you've got the curve here, take a snip like this. It just helps that little section of the seam allowance, when you turn it around, it just helps it to spread, so it makes it easier to lay flat on a curve. So I'll just do that, and then we can then flip it through. Right, let's turn the facing round then. So just carefully poke it through all the way around. You will need to give it a press afterwards, just to make it lie flat, and then we will be doing a little bit of stitching on the outside of the fabric just to make it sit flat anyway. So it's these straps, that the back ones, where they get a little bit stuck, and you need to maybe just have a little bit of a helping hand with a chopstick. I just use the blunt end rather than the point initially, just to poke that through, and then I will just use the pointier end, so where we get to the bit where it's the square, so I just literally get it and just ease out the point with the sharper end of the chopsticks. Just there we go. And so I'll continue doing that all the way around, and then we will be looking to stitch around the edge, just to stop it from that facing from rolling out. Lovely, so we now have the facing flipped in, and I've pressed it with the iron just to make it lay nice and flat. And so the next stage is this stitching that we're going to do just literally around the outside of the dress, just down a little bit. So we'll do that, and that just keeps it laying nice and flat. You will also need to have this part of the facing at the side seam, just to make sure that that's actually going to stay in place. You can either stitch in the ditch, where you stitch a line of stitching right down the seam line, or you can just hand sew a few little catch stitches here just to stop that facing from flipping out. Okay, so that's our next stage. Okay, before we start on to the next bit, what we were going to do is obviously stitch round the edge of the dress to keep the facing in, but I've actually decided I'm not going to do that on here. The good thing is about patterns is you don't always have to follow the rules, and I'm changing the rules, bending it slightly, because I think it just looks better without it. So I'm just not going to do that, but it's optional. So if you do want to do it, it's really easy. You just literally follow the line all the way around the edge, just to put a neat row of stitches around there. You could put decorative stitches if you're experienced, or you could just keep it simple and just use a straight stitch. And you just want to do that literally 1/8 of an inch, sorry, not an inch, 1/8 of a, yeah, sorry, 1/8 of an inch down from that. If you prefer it a bit wider, you could do it more. But yeah, I'm not going to do that on this one. So you'll notice that I've actually got some thread sticking out of the top of the strap pieces on the dress, and also on this side 2 little green threads where the buttons should be. Now I've done that because we made the markings on the reverse of the fabric, so what I did was I just turned the facing back through the other way, and I just hand stitched some thread through, so I knew where it was on the front, because obviously we didn't put the markings on the right side of the fabric because I don't think it's necessary. I think it's easy enough to just turn it around and do it with some different coloured thread. And I just use some of this thread here. It's not cotton, it's like a silk, an embroidery silk, and I just used a couple of strands out of that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is actually stitch in the ditch down this seam line here, just so the facing does stay in on the side seams, so it will stop it flipping out on those bits. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just use a straight stitch and literally just stitch right in the seam line there, which is called stitch in the ditch, which is a quilting term. Okay, so that bit's done. As you can see, I've stitched it down so it doesn't lift up anymore on both sides. And then I'm just going to leave the rest as is. So I'm now going to hem the bottom of the dress to finish that, and then we've just got to put the snaps on, and then we're done. So for the bottom of the hem, before I do that, I'm going to zigzag the raw edge of the fabric. I'm not going to fold it over and then zigzag it. I'm literally just going to zigzag straight onto this raw edge just to stop the fraying. I will do a double hem where you do a small fold and then fold again, because I do think that gives a neater finish like that, but I just want to zigzag that first just to stop anything unravelling, and if the hem ever came down, it's not a massive issue then to put it back up if necessary. So I'll change the foot on my sewing machine to the overlocker foot, and then I shall zigzag that on my machine. Okay, so ensuring that you're starting at a side seam, and you've got the fabric butted up to that guideline if you are using one of these feet. You can obviously use it without, like I said previously. And I'm just going to zigzag all the way around the edge, and then I will snip off any bits that are still sticking out from the frayed fabric. Okay. When you do come to these side seams, you just make sure that the inside seams are facing towards the back as you press them before, because otherwise it just give a bit of extra bulk that you don't want if they swap over. So just make sure it's flat in the right direction, so it's towards the back of the dress. There we go, all overlocked on the raw edge. So now I'm going to press up the hem, and to do that I'm going to use obviously my steam iron, and I'm just going to make a little fold, probably, I don't know, maybe a couple of centimetres like this, that sort of size, and then I'll fold it again a couple of centimetres. So I'll press it a couple of centimetres first, then press it another couple of centimetres, so it'll be a double hem, and then I will literally top stitch along the top, on top of the dress, to keep that in place. So I'll take this over to the ironing board, and then we'll come back and stitch that hem. Okay, so I've steam ironed the hem into a double fold. I have put some pins in, not loads, just a few, just to hold it in place, as it did start flipping out. And I've just measured it, and it's actually measuring ½ an inch that I've folded over, so it would be an inch in total off the end of the dress. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch along the edge just to hold that hem in place, just with a straight stitch, and we'll see how far I need to go in with that. Okay, I've had a look on my machine, and I'm going to follow the line for 2/8 of an inch to get it in just the right place, so it will catch that seam underneath, so I know that it won't be above or too low. And needle down, 2/8 of an inch, and off we go. Oh, got a bit stuck there. And we'll take some pins out this time, try and be good. There we are, all hemmed, And I've just gone over it with the steam iron just to set the stitches, and it's laid nice and flat and it all matches up, so I know the hems that they're all accurate. So now for the fun bit, we're going to attach the little plastic snaps with the Vario pliers. So I'll get my pliers. Here they are, as I showed you in Crafty So and So in Leicester. These are the Vario pliers from Prim, and again you can get them most haberdashery shops and online. I think they're about £15 as I recall, so they're not cheap, but they're brilliant, really good for putting snaps on things, and they are quite addictive, so you'll be putting snaps on everything. And the snaps I use, again, like I said, are Prim colour snaps, I think they're called, and they've got a little back piece which has got like a point on it, if you can see that, and then you also put one on the front as well, and then you have a female and a male, wrong one, a male, a female and a male snap fastening. I don't know if you can see the difference, but that one has a groove on the top that sticks up and the other one's quite flat, and so one will be the front and one will be the back. Okay, and then for each snap you need 2 of those, and then 1 male and 1 female, a little bit. And I think for this dress, rather than just having 1 snap in the middle, I think I'm going to put 2, just because there is enough room to have 2, and it also just makes it a little bit more secure. But it's totally up to you, your preference. So using the guides with the thread that I've popped on there, I know roughly where I want to put the snaps, so I just need to make sure that I can fit 2 on this bit because it's not as wide as the front section, and so I will just double check that before I actually pop them on, because once they're on they won't be coming off, and they are reinforced quite well because you do put some pressure on these to get them on, and then they do stay on, which is good. So okay, I'm going to find where I want them, and then I shall show you once I've got them through. I mean, what I will show you though is with the front and the back piece, these are the ones that will be on display on the front of your dress. So when you do your straps for the back, you'll be needing to put this one on the inside of where that marking is, because that strap will be going inside there, so you'll have that poking through with your male section on there, or your female section, whichever way you want it round. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way, I'll just go with what I think is right. Okay, so I shall go ahead and pop them on, and then before I actually apply them, I'll show you where I've put those bits so you can see. Okay, so I've poked 2 through on the back strap, so that bit, sorry, there is on the inside of the dress, okay, inside of the dress. So I'm going to put on those little pokey out bits there the female sections, so the bits with the divots that are in, and then you just pop one over the top with the backing on it, and this section here, this white bit, that's where that big round bit at the bottom will go in there, and then this bit on the top here, you're literally going to squeeze down onto it like this and put quite a lot of pressure on the ends, and just give it a really good squeeze, and then it will squash the middle button bit in, and then that is on the reverse there. So again, I'll show you that, so I'll pop that on back in because it's just come out. So the sticky out bits there. Get the female section, pop it on there, just hold it, and then put that white section on the big bit, and then squish it down really hard. So you've got the clear bit there on that other bit, and there are those 2 snaps. Okay, so then I shall just align one on the front bit and then show you that. Okay, I've aligned my front snap pieces. So I'll have the male sections on the inside of the front facing, and then those little plastic white bits on the front of the dress. And again, I just need to squish those bits on. So again, that white bit on the big plastic bit on the front, and then the clear bit on the male section. So again, give it a good squeeze. And I'll do that on the other one. I check that they are lined up before I've squashed them on, so fingers crossed they're in the right place. And I'll just pull that thread out that I had for marking it. And then you should see that they should snap together on there, and there's one strap done. Okay, so I'll do exactly the same for the other strap, and then I shall show you the finished dress. And ta-da! We have them on. And I'm really happy with the placement of them, and they fit just lovely. Gives a nice neckline there, and it's just so easy to unsnap them and do them back up again. It's great, obviously, for whipping it off children if you've had any accidents on there. And I think it's just a quick alternative to doing buttons and buttonholes, which can be quite fiddly, and also when you've got a wriggly child, it's obviously quicker to do snaps up than it is to do buttons. But again, totally your preference, and you can get these, like I said, in all sorts of different colours, so whatever fabric you're using, you can get ones to coordinate or to contrast. And with these I've just chosen white just to pick out the white, and it is only actually the only colour that I had with me to go with this fabric. So you could use purple, or maybe like a nice sage green colour, but yeah, loads of choices, and the hem looks nice, and I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. So that's finished, and if you are quite particular, you can always pop your own label in there if you have one, or you could hand make your own by using a scrap of fabric and just putting a pretty picture on it by using one of your decorative stitches, just an idea, or even a little tag or something. I don't know. I suppose you put a tag on for a coat, but maybe not for a dress. Yeah, so that's it, all finished. So that concludes the dressmaking tutorial.
Hi everyone, welcome back, and congratulations on making it to the end of this tutorial for Loros UK on how to make a little girl's dress. You can see here in the background we have our finished product, and I'm really pleased with it. And so I really do hope that you've enjoyed the process, and I've really enjoyed filming the tutorial for you. It has been the first time I've ever done anything like this, so I hope that I've done it justice. And really what I just want you to take from this video is inspiration to go out there to these charity shops and purchase items that you can upcycle, because it is a really enjoyable process and you are supporting a good cause, obviously. So once again, just want to say thank you very much for sticking with me, and I really hope that you have enjoyed it. Thanks then, bye!